love and happiness. Winter, spring, and fall, and summer's full of bliss. Someday we'd buy the house, maybe have a couple kids. We plan to have it all. We didn't plan for this at all. There's a picture in my mind of how life could have been if we didn't build those walls. When the storms of life came in, and I could use a friend to help me sort this out. 'Cause we planned to have it all. We didn't plan for this at all. We planned to have it all. We didn't plan for this at all. That's sort of the without the sax solo.
Folks, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show here in Crown Heights in Brooklyn with an amazing human being and great musician. Got a chance to meet him in person for the first time. Zephaniah, OHora, welcome to the welcome back to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Great to be back, man. Thanks for having me back, as always.
It's an honor, man. You know, I wanted to ask you this. It was something that was on my mind. I was curious if there was a time, or maybe even during the pandemic, when you actually realized, like, you had to stop taking in input, like music, and because you had too much going on in your head. I've just talked to cats before where they were like, at a certain point, they had to stop the input in order to determine what was really their voice. And I wanted you to talk about a time any time in your career when you realized it was like, I got to kind of wipe the hard drive out so I can hear what is going on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always listening to music, that's the thing. But, well, I think I just switch over to Segovia or something that doesn't have, you know. I listen to a lot of Segovia, and you know who really got me into Segovia? I'd always enjoyed it, and when I heard it, from my friend Jim Campolonga, who I played with for years, he's super, super duper into Segovia. He has like every single Segovia record ever. And so...
How does that...
if I clear my mind, I feel like in order to get away from other influences, if that's kind of what you mean, finding myself like, you know, instrumental music that, you know, is just raw and pure, you know, back to the roots kind of thing is, I think, the place to go in those times. So maybe that's what I did. I don't know if I even remember. It feels like a long time ago at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to me, it's like there were drummers that I've talked to that, you know, they had to, at a certain point, they were listening to other cats so much that they were comping, you know. And you know, you're known as more of a singer, obviously, but is it fair to say that you've you've had some influences, but you've kind of just been a rogue street scholar in some ways? I see all the records here. You know,
I feel like I have a lot of influences, but I get really obsessive into things. You know, so I like to learn as much as I can about how someone does something. You know,
give an example.
I mean, as far as my country roots go, or you know, as far as my country trajectory was, you know, I kind of heard the early country stuff initially and got into bluegrass, and then, you know, I always wanted to hear, like, steel guitar. Where is that? What does that sound? I mean, the first time, I think I told you one time that, first time I really think that I realized that it was pedal steel was listening to that Dylan Hard Rain record or Neil Young Harvest, I was like, oh, that's not a guitar, it's a pedal steel, you know. So I kind of, with my country trajectory, as far as obsessively like discovering everything, you know, I started out with like Ray Price and stuff like that, and learn all that classic shuffle, you know, the
Country shuffle, country shuffle.
And I got super into Ernest Tubb and the Texas Troubadours, and I was still trying to find that, and then I finally got into Merle Haggard from there, because I was kind of trying to find like, how can I use this to get inspiration, like a formula or some sort of thing to write songs. You probably don't necessarily want to write all kind of Ray Price style songs because it's so like of its time. And I feel like Merle, like I've said many times in interviews, is always like a good, if you're going to be a singer, songwriter, country person, that's a good person to sort of emulate on some level, because to me it translates a little better into the modern world. But you know,
explain that. In what ways? Just the message?
Just like it's like the songwriting, like it's not, it's much more personal in a way and less tropey, I suppose, than the earlier country before that, because maybe people coming out of the war or something, that, you know, people like Ernest Tubb and that time period, like people, you know, maybe you didn't share so much about your personal life, you just sing about like being at a bar or like cheating on your wife or something, you know, like. And
it's pretty straightforward.
The 60s came around and people like Merle came around, and then you have people kind of going a little more inward, or at least being a little bit more expressive about more of their personal feelings than, say, Ernest Tubb was in 1949 or whatever, you know what I mean? So there's that, and just the combination of the instruments, it's electrified in a different way than like Ernest Tubb and stuff like that was, or Ray Price even. Like those recordings are much more, you know, I don't know what the right word is, archaic sounding maybe.
Well, you said that they fit a certain period of time.
Yeah, and it's like the recording technology changed, so you had all the combination of all the stuff with what Merle was doing, so it's a good formula, and I think pretty much anyone's doing somewhat traditional sounding or classic sounding country with a modern twist, it's like definitely they're just ripping off, you know, Merle pretty much, or kind of those guys from the 60s and
well, I'm glad you just brought this up, because like I had this cosmic interview with Merle, and
that's right, yeah,
and he was like, I mean, it was a different America. He was arrested 12 times. He was in the hole. He was still making hit records. Then he got his record expunged. It was a wild. So that, in my mind, the man had a blues story. Miles grew up rich, but he could play the blues.
Right.
I wanted you to talk about, and I thought about it. It's kind of crystallized with me, especially in improvisational music, jazz specifically, modern music. You got a lot of cats coming out of the academy sounding like they're professors. There's kind of a homogenization of sound. It's hard to hear what their story is. I mean,
right.
When did the blues enter your life? Because I used to think you had to live that hard Scrabble life, but that's not true. And you've lived through a lot of different ebbs and flows. Can you talk about how the blues kind of entered your existence?
Well, I mean, you know, like I've said before, I grew up in the church. I mean, so that's probably kind of the first places I started to hear that. I mean, my dad was still is super into like Muddy Waters and B.B. King and stuff like that. So if you're talking about literal blues, you know, I definitely was exposed to that and the Allman Brothers and stuff, and you know, but I would say, you know, as far as
your life, yeah.
You know, I don't know. I mean, it's something I've pondered my whole life, and I still wonder, like, why are certain people like more depressed, or why are certain people have anxiety, or people if they had like a good childhood. Like I had a good childhood. I wasn't like, my dad didn't beat me up.
Dude, so did I, and I still had anxiety. Yeah, I had a very loving.
But it's a strange thing. Like, where does that come from? And that's when I do start to subscribe to the idea of maybe it's past lives, or, you know, this is kind of an easy one to use, but there's things like that. But I will have to say, and I've talked with my older brother about this, you know, I have like 4 siblings, is we grew up as kids going to church, like hardcore Christian evangelical church, and when I'm a kid, you're learning about like you're gonna go to hell, like like, and it sounds like cliche because we've heard a ton of people talk about it because a lot of people grew up in that. But when you start hearing about serious stuff like the mark of the beast and the end times and Revelations and gnashing of teeth and like like you're gonna if you don't like if you do this thing or that thing, you
you're going, you're a sinner.
Or
yeah,
something,
right. Right.
Like that's
petrifying.
That's some pretty heavy shit for a kid. When you're an innocent kid, when you're 5 years old or 6 years old, that's pretty like heavy duty stuff. When I was a kid growing up, we saw this church play that they did every year, and it was like pretty, it was like a big production. I think it was called The Bride, but it was like always this. It was like
New Hampshire.
Yeah, it was in New Hampshire. It was like. And it's if anyone knows of it, I'm sure they're like chuckling. But it was like serious, where it was like battles between Christ and Satan, and like it was like done in a very theatrical presentation. So as a kid, it was like pretty kind of like whoa, but it was fun to watch as a kid. I didn't get to watch scary movies or things. I was protected from that. But anyways. I think
explain how
that's where that comes from.
So explain. So the sadness or the blues comes from the fact that there was sort of these projections of having to conform to something, and if not, you were going to be over the cliff.
Yeah, and learning or being aware of darkness and evil or what have you. Like on some more, not just watching, Ninja Turtles as a kid, not going to church or something. Like you're learning about like it's real, like it's in your life, and like your loved ones might be in hell if they don't repent and become saved, or your friends, and it feels very like unfair or like unjust or something. So maybe that's where some of that creeps in.
Can you talk? I mean, I brought you a record today because I really gravitate towards people that are deeply spiritual, not dogmatic. I mean,
right.
Can you just talk about? I mean, I just really realized, like me too. I mean, I grew up agnostic, but I think I just wanted to talk to you about when you access the God within you. I mean, that's the point, is that we all have it inside of us.
Well, yeah, I think I told you about that the first time we talked. That song from my record, Listening to the Music, that I wrote was the first song I was able to really express. At some point, I'm going to church. I remember like the music just moving me so much. I wanted to like raise my hands or what have you.
Yes.
And my siblings made fun of me for it. They never let me off the hook for that for like the rest of our childhood.
Because you were just so ecstatic.
It made me mad. Like it made me angry that I was being ridiculed for being open and seeking out like some higher power. But it was connected with music, and so like my siblings, most of them didn't get so much into the church scene as I did. I was like leading worship and doing the whole thing, so I got deeper into it. I feel like that was just maybe the avenue I was searching out, that thing, and that was where I went. So that was the first time that I connected, I feel like, with some sort of higher power or something, and it was through, hearing this church band. They had like drums and electric guitars. This guy Ed played drums, and he was like my hero when I was a kid. I thought he was the coolest guy.
He's the guy that came out of the Dylan Saved You? Or he thought
he
was
the
guitar player?
The guitar player, Jack.
Dude, this drummer, I would love to hear this band, dude.
Ed always wore, like, he was one of those guys, he always wore, like, a nice, I mean, I guess a lot of those guys did, but sure. Jack wore more, like, almost, like, Western, Southwestern style, like, and he had, like, the Dylan kind of permed hair, like, indoor sunglasses, and a beard, or, like, he had, like, a handlebar mustache. But Ed always was, like, kind of a shorter guy, always carried his drumsticks and always had, like, nice slacks. He looked like a jazz musician, you know what I mean? Like, he had a nice shirt and slacks and just like a soft-spoken. He kind of looked like Charlie Watts in a way.
Wow.
Anyways, so.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. One cat that I recently connected with, and legendary cat, but when he told me this story, it just blew my mind. John Lee Shannon, you and him met in a hair salon. I mean, you were working. Yeah. Can you take us? I mean,
tell too many people that.
Well, we're going to tell the world now. Like it's interesting because I remember him talking about being. He got to New York, or got to Brooklyn, and he was kind of disenchanted with music, or he just wasn't really feeling it. And he's like, I just want to do something else. And then when he saw you there, somehow he either, maybe, I don't think he knew you at all, but he saw you and was like, I'm supposed to know that guy.
Yeah.
And then can you fill in the blanks for that? Because I think it's one of the most special stories, considering that you guys are both links in the chain to modern live American music, or world music in general.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess we just kind of hit it off. Like we talked about music, and I was in this like, just like Stonesy kind of band. You know, I had like really long hair, and you know, I had like the Keith Richards bangs haircut. You know what I mean? Like my hair was black, and like, I was really into like that, you know, look, and so I was in this band, and like I didn't even have a guitar amp. I didn't have my own guitar amp. You know, I had like this electric guitar, and I ended up selling my amp to get a lap steel actually when I first moved to New York. I don't know why I did that, because I
you love that sound.
Play it, but I mean, you know, it's like you need a lot of time to. What's the point if you're really not gonna like really be obsessed with steel? But anyways, so I didn't have an amp, you know, and I think he was like, oh, you can borrow mine. But I don't think I ever actually ended up borrowing his amp, and then, you know, but we kind of just started talking, and yeah, we just like, yeah, I feel like I saw John, and I was like, that guy seems like a cool dude, and you know, it was in a salon with mostly women, so it was like, maybe you gravitate towards the guy, and like, oh, he seems like, you know, a good, cool dude, so we'll, you know. And so that's, I don't really know, like, at some point when we started hanging out, we eventually just started hanging out, and then, you know, just started, like, listening to records and partying or whatever, and going out to bars and stuff, so that was kind of, and then from there, we were just buds, you know, we kind of, like, helped each other survive through the, working at a, you know, expensive salon in Manhattan, like, you know.
So you both were working there. But but I think
we were both apprentices at that time. So like,
what does it take to get to the next level after the apprentice?
Just many years of many haircuts.
God, I need a haircut. Yeah,
sweating it out, like pretending that you know.
Yeah, right.
You know, you learn all
Fake
this stuff.
Till you make
we
it,
definitely like we're well educated with that, but you know, it still takes that many more hundreds or whatever many hours to learn how to do a haircut, and also the whole psychology of it. You know, I don't want to get too far into the haircut thing, but you know, but it is interesting because you have to catch someone's vibe and then curate a conversation around who they are, what their vibe is, and then like be confident. And if the haircut's not going necessarily in the direction you want it to, or like they're nervous about a change or whatever, you need to be
confident.
Good, and you know,
so
it's an interesting like psychology, and it's a good. I think it's a good skill to have, like even just people skills. You know, there's a whole thing within that. Anyway, so we were apprentices, and then
did he? I think if I remember correctly, he really said he gave you a lot of credit for getting him inspired to get back into music.
Well, I knew how great of a guitar player John was, and it was more like he just played guitar at his apartment, or we'd be hanging out late at night, a bunch of us, and we'd just have a guitar around, and he would play all this awesome, like, classical stuff, and he got really into Chet Atkins. He knew all that, like, finger-style guitar, and so, and John's another one of those guys that he's similar. He gets really obsessive with something and just learns really how everything is put together, like, how do you do this, you know? So, and he does that even better than most people I know. So, like, he really knew how to play country guitar, like Chet Atkins stuff, and, you know, any direction he goes in, that's kind of his thing. He did that with hair, too. He was a good mentor for me for hair, because he had a much different part of his brain when he approaches doing hair than I did, so he was more technically skilled. Like,
I really am envious of those people.
Yeah.
Because they really get into it and they learn it through and through. Yeah.
But anyways, so yeah, I was always saying, man, John, like, you gotta play music, man, like, and I was always kind of maybe trying to get out of the salon. I just kind of went there to try to make money so I could play music, but then I realized, holy, this is a lot harder than I thought, and so it just took a lot of my energy, and so eventually, once I was playing with Campolongo, I I just wanted to be able to sing in the studio, and I was such close friends with John and loved his playing, so I was like, dude, just come in and play acoustic guitar and play all the acoustic stuff. And you know, they were a little bit like, it was very last minute, and they're like, I don't know, who's this John guy? I'm like, just trust me, he's a great guy.
Who's
and then
this
from
John?
there, Camp Longo was like, this John Shannon guy is amazing, like just has amazing touch, and he, you know, he's playing all the acoustic stuff, and you know, people would think, oh, that's like really easy, you just strum the guitar. It's like, in the studio, and to do the kind of country stuff we were doing, that requires really skill, really great, you know, technique, and that's what John had. So he was the perfect guy, and he was a fun hang. So that's kind of like how he got, and then everyone knew all of a sudden that everyone that I was, the little scene I was in, that Roy Williams introduced me to, and John introduced me to Roy Williams. All those guys were hot guitar players and steel players, and then they're like, what? John Shannon plays guitar.
Oh my! I love it, dude. What is
so
that?
It's kind of that thing.
I love that humble attitude. I mean,
I don't know if that's the secret. No, that's the backstory of it all. But
well, John will definitely fill in some of the blanks if we missed. I mean, you just mentioned off air, like, I mean, you just joined Grateful Shred, which is just so exciting. But you said something along the lines like that maybe you wish you had road dogged it earlier in your career a little bit. Can you talk about like explain why you here's the point. This is what I want to convey, because I think part of my anxiety used to come from just putting a huge amount of expectations on things and then never having them met. So I remember McLaughlin told me, or somebody told me, it's not about it's only about intentions. What are your intentions? You know. No expectations, because then if you're going in with a pure heart, what are your intentions? You know, are you doing something devious, or are you doing it for the love?
Right.
And so, and in that case, you can be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I just wonder about, talk a little bit about your intentions. You guys are going to go on a long tour. It's going to be pretty intense. Make 30 shows in 30 days. I don't even know what it is. It's just going to be a lot. Be barnstorming the country. You know, you're going to Phoenix. I'll be up there. You're going to Brooklyn. I mean, I'm going to be at a bunch of shows. Talk about what your intentions are, and as opposed to trying to not put pressure on yourself.
Well, I mean, as you know, I love the Dead. I mean, I've always.
You got your.
I actually found this box in here that my older brother
of cassettes.
Of cassettes, I wish, but you know, the classic thing. I'm like, how do you get into the Dead? The traditional way that you get in, or whatever, is an older brother, like an older friend, says, "Hey man, check this band out. These guys are awesome." And you're like, "I don't know about this. It's kind of weird." And then they keep sending you stuff or giving you stuff, and you're like, "Whoa, wait a minute, this is cool stuff." And so he used to send me all these CDs. Of when different like Dick's picks were coming out, and so I still have. Actually, I just found this box in here. I should have kept it in here, but I've just been going through stuff trying to get rid of things, and I found these CDs, and he used to send me this. But anyway,
was it like 83 Hartford or 71 Lakeland?
One of the ones that I still have, which I'll probably never get rid of, is the February of '78 in like Wisconsin.
Wow! Oh
it's
yeah,
like
that's the first one.
Shows.
Dane County.
That's the first,
Dane County.
Yeah, that's the first Eyes of the World I ever heard.
Wow.
The first Wheel I heard, I think.
I just want to be clear. I didn't have an older brother, and my way of getting to the Dead was very obtuse. But was it a live vibe? You weren't exposed to the studio stuff.
I never heard the studio stuff. I honestly don't even really know the studio stuff to this day. I don't really listen to it.
No, I think that's why there's a love-hate relationship, because I think that a lot of cats that grew up in parts of the country on the jukebox, that's all they heard was Skeletons from the Closet. So that's what they thought the Dead was. You know? But so you're talking about the live introduction.
Yeah, I always just heard live, and the Ladies and Gentlemen at the Fillmore East, those shows. Like that was kind of the first stuff I heard, along with that Dane County show, were the first ones I heard, I believe. But anyways, I've always been into the Dead since like my early 20s, and when I was taking a bunch of psychedelics, it was like it made sense. But I didn't know all the songs, and then I got over time much more deeper into it. But anyways, where are we going with that? So Grateful Shred. So I mean, I love this music. I've always loved the Dead, and there's some sort of connection with the Dead and so many other things that I got into, and So
You mean
I
like
just-
the Chet Ack, like country stuff, or like what?
yeah, like all the, I mean, I know the only way I'd heard of maybe Merle Haggard was through the Dead, like doing Mama Tried or Sing Me Back Home and things like that.
Yeah, totally.
So anyway, what's my intentions? I mean, my intention is just to play music that I love playing and try to grow as much as I can as a musician. And, you know, I was telling you earlier that I've spent more time just trying to get better at guitar. You know, like, you know, it's always something that Shannon always told me, and maybe Campolongo too, especially Shannon was like, you know, those guys aren't great guitar players just because they're lucky or they're special or talented. It's like they spent the time doing it. So I've been kind of really buckling down since the pandemic, oddly enough, like just trying to become a better musician, playing guitar, not just a songwriter, not just a singer-songwriter that has his backing band. So this feels like a natural progression because it's, you know, it's treating it like the American songbook. That's what the Dead's music is at this point, you know, and so...
That canon is insane, yeah.
Yeah,
I agree,
and it's only going to make me better as a writer and a musician to, like, really get deep into this stuff on the level of playing it.
Do you
So
find
that's-
yourself like I mean, like, are you an ear learner? Like, do you just sort of like, I mean, are you like learning out of books, or you just find yourself trying to like put on a Grant Green record and just? I mean, to me, it's like, you know, just throw it out there and see what
I
happens.
think it's a little bit of all that.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I learned how to read music when I played saxophone growing up in school. That was the first instrument that I played.
It was like King Curtis or something. That's insane. Like
I played
R&B.
alto, like, you know.
Dude.
But my brother used to send me, you know, my brother got me into a lot of the music I'm into, Zach.
So he
You
was
know,
a music
sent
head.
me,
Yeah.
my second CD that actually, he didn't send this to me, I bought this. First CD I ever bought was, you know, when CDs were new or newish.
Yeah,
early
absolutely.
early 90s
Mid
or
80s,
what
yeah,
have
late
you,
80s, yeah.
I think this is probably like right in the beginning of the 90s. Maybe it was the mid 90s by that point. I was probably like 11 or 12, maybe 13. But Grant Green's Solid was the first record.
I have that in my
CD I
car,
got.
dude. My God.
And,
Greens, Greens.
Cannonball Adderley, that live record, what's the title? It's escaping me right now.
Happy People?
Mercy, Mercy, Mercy.
Whoa, okay, so that's with Zolino, yeah.
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 So anyway, I mean, I was playing saxophone, whatever. But anyways, I learned how to read music.
Dude, I
playing-
love that you
playing
were channeling Cannonball on the alto.
Well, I mean, Lou Donaldson, yeah, right. You know,
Dude, that
kidding me?
cat's
Those
still
guys
doing
are-
it, man.
But you know, the thing about saxophone was like, I was like, I can't sing. Like, I can't sing and do this. And I liked singing, so I was like, I want to play guitar, you know, because then I could sing.
Well, I was going to ask you, like, a lot of people say, like, you get to a point. I could feel us having this conversation, like, in a couple years, and people sing through their instrument.
Well, of course, then there's those guys. What's his name? That plays like, you know, the three saxes at the same time.
Yeah, Rassan, Roland Kirk, or
Roland Kirk,
yeah.
and then there's the other guy. Sorry,
Joseph Jarman.
Too many beers last
a
night.
lot. Yeah, you had a lot. Late, you know, Mapache was heavy.
Yeah, that was a fun time. Eddie Harris, you know, he sort of sings like, you know, he
Dude,
plays-
Eddie. Oh, dude,
like
that's
the way he
so...
plays, it sounds like you know, Bessie Smith or something. You know, it sounds like an old singer, like. What, he plays with a trombone mouthpiece or something like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's right. Some bone mouthpiece and a sax.
Yeah, so, you know, I mean, so learning by ear, that was the question you had. I do a bit of everything, and like YouTube, I mean, YouTube is great, like, you know, it's like, but, you know, you might see behind me, I got some songwriting books, you know. People are sort of against that kind of like, you're not supposed to read about it, you're supposed to just like go do it, and like just go listen to, you know, just listen to all these records and then you'll be fine. It's like, well, there is a method, and then it's interesting to understand the methodology behind a good song, and then you can say, oh yeah, that's why this song is good. You know, like I'm looking at this, and you know, so I've done all that kind of stuff, like writing exercises for songwriting and writing lyrics, or, you know, kind of delving into your. I've talked about this before with you, I think.
Sure, no, I mean...
So I think with guitar, it's similar to me. It should probably apply as much as possible. But YouTube is great because there are some good people out there that make little things, even if they're cornball people that like are making the corniest videos. Like they're still like, oh yeah, okay, that's how you do that little lick. I can look that up, and then I can go listen to the record and cross-reference. Like, well, it's a little different, or I can go watch a live video of so like, what's that chord Bobby's playing, or what's that?
Well,
like,
I wanted to ask
thing
you about
Jerry
that.
does or whatever.
With shred methodology, I mean, you know, when Melvin Seals joined the Jerry Garcia band, he's like, "Yeah, can I have some tapes? Like, let me hear some tapes." And they're like, "No, because you're going to then play like Merle Saunders, you know, or Legion of Mary or something like that." So, you know,
Sure.
With shred, with, you know, previously, I mean, you're not, you know, would you go back and listen to some of their stuff potentially, or do they encourage?
No, I think no one gave me any instructions. More just
Which
like,
is great, you know. You're just
I
sort
mean,
of
Austin knows that I'm a little bit of a dead self-proclaimed dead scholar or something. You know, where it's like I do know.
Dude,
like,
you're the man. Dude, you
I
got your
know
what's
too
the
much.
pod? Was it a podcast?
And I don't even know that much compared to obviously other people. What was that?
No, but you have the streaming. You still do.
I did that during the pandemic, and you know, like
You are Scott. No, I mean everyone has their own.
I do know like maybe too much about that band, and that's the interesting. that's the interesting thing about joining a band like Shred or heading that direction, or you know, I've always heard some people, like maybe my brother said this, like it's like, you know, you like the thing about taking DMT or something is like, you know, you might find you don't want to know that much.
That's right.
I've never actually taken DMT. I have a ton of books that I've always been fascinated.
Ayahuasca.
I had opportunities. I took tons of LSD and things like that, but then by the time I had the opportunity to, I was like, I've had too many bummer trips. Maybe I don't need to go.
So you knew too much.
But I'm sure I'll go back and blow out the old cobwebs at some point.
Dude, well, let me know, because I want to do it. Because Marty Ballin said, when, you know, from the airplane, rest in peace, he said that was Garcia and Kesey and his, that was their drug of choice.
That's crazy.
You know, they would go shoom,
and
way
I know
up.
lots of people that have, and seems like no big deal for them. But anyway, the point is like learning all that dead stuff so intimately, like, because you need to at least learn it to play it, then you can kind of add your own little things. Is that too, like, you know, because there is some stuff where you're like, oh, that's that little, like, that's that chord, or that's,
right.
Those are those
The
parts
epiphanies,
for this song. Like,
yeah.
I always kind of felt like it was magic, where it's like, I don't know what the hell they're doing, but it's so them. And then when you actually start to learn what it is, and you're like, oh, that's all it is, or like, oh, it's not the easiest thing here, but that's what it is. So it's like, can you learn too much? But I think you just gotta follow that and go in that direction. And
most importantly,
yeah.
my intention, I just want you to have fun. You know, I just want you to,
and
you know, that's what it's supposed to be about.
Fun,
it's supposed to be fun, you know?
It's fun, and if you love it, if you feel a passion for it, then you go do it. And, you know, I never really thought about playing Ray Price stuff, or like Ernest Tubb stuff, or Merle stuff, or whoever, you know, as in like looking at it. Like, I just loved it. So for me, it was like I was obsessively just trying to learn all the songs and try to perform it live, and like playing with the band and being like, dude, that's the shuffle. That's how it's supposed to sound, you know? And then maybe I'll write some songs in that style, and then I'll come up with a little bit of my own style within that. You know, it's, so, yeah, that's kind of where, but that's the thing, mostly just having fun and playing music, which is just such a wonderful thing to do, and like doing it with as many different people as you can while you do it, you know.
But, you know, I just wanted you to talk about how your son has changed your life, especially as it relates to allowing you to be more yourself. My kids just like, I mean, you know, for better or for worse, they broke me open. Like, I don't worry about shame, judgment. It might be to my detriment sometimes, but at the same time, it's like, I'm just going to be myself, because that's how I feel. That's how I'm going to be. My soul's going to live. How has your son affected that in you?
Oh man, I mean, there's so much to still discover.
Absolutely.
Crack
Well, he's
open.
young.
It still seems like it's just barely like cracking into some.
Does it feel like time has kind of stopped a little bit?
Yeah, for a long time there, it was like just a little thing that
Peanut,
just eats and sleeps and poops, and that's all it is. Like, there's not so much like interaction, but now he's not quite 2 yet, but now there's starting to be more, you know, interaction, like what we feel, how we interact with people, you know, like as opposed to a baby is just like this thing, you need to just make sure it doesn't die, basically. That's the goal with the baby, you know what I mean? It's like, just make sure it survives till tomorrow, you know? And so that's its own, like, heavy, strange thing.
I dig.
And there's no manual, you know? It's like, how do you do this, you know? So, but I'd say the first initial thing maybe was like, and this is like superficial on some level, I guess, but, you know, I think that maybe I stopped being concerned about getting older. Like, some people don't care about that. I've always had a little bit of a hard time, like, man, like, I was freaking out, like, I'm going to be 30 soon, like, 30, man, like, my life's going to be over. Like, wow. I need to, like, have all the fun now, because when I turn 30...
And was that something that was some sort of, like...
I don't know where that comes from. I think just some people are like
You're right.
I think certain personality types, maybe that are nostalgic people that are really maybe a little too in the past, which I'm one of those people, which maybe is why I'm so into music and old music, is it's sort of like time travel. You can...
I'm so there, dude. And then you bring it into your own world. I mean, I don't look at it as nostalgia. We weren't even alive for that.
Yeah, but even if you weren't, there's still, you get to...
It's time travel. That's what
I was always gotten into all sorts of different periods and, like, just be like, man, I wish I was alive in the 60s, you know? But some people, like, don't care. Some people love modern stuff. And ironically enough, people like the Dead and a lot of these people that really paved the road for all of us, they were into now. They were into the future.
Absolutely.
And that's the thing that really sets that generation apart, I think, from people my generation now. It's very much like a strange thing that we have all this recorded music that we can look back on, and so now we're in some strange loop of everyone emulating something that's already been done from the past.
So you're talking about the cats from that psychedelic period always pushing into the future.
I think
you're absolutely right, yeah. But now we're saturated with material.
It's strange because they didn't have what we have now, which is all this recorded information.
Yeah, right. That's right.
So, anyways, that's a whole other...
And it's also visual. I mean, they might catch stuff on the radio once. I remember listening to Bobby, I'll send you the interview, but he's talking about, it's 84, and he's in a hotel room at Nassau Coliseum, and they're asking about punk bands, and he's talking about the Tubes. He's like totally up to date, you know? He's like in it, you know? And yet we are... maybe because we're saturated in the mod music, there's so much mediocrity that we go back to the authenticity so much, you know?
Yeah,
search for that.
It's a strange puzzle that many people have tried to break down and
there's some pieces that are missing.
Why is this happening? Like, why, since the 90s, you know, are we just, you know, once the bands came out in the early 2000s, like the Strokes and the Vines and all that stuff. Not that I want to spend too much time on this era of music, but it was a strange thing because it was like all of a sudden it was like everyone's trying to look like, and that happened in the 80s too. The 60s thing came back in the 80s a little bit, you know, and then by the 2000s the 80s thing was coming back. But there was also the thing like, oh, let's go back to like rock and roll, Stonesy kind of bands, you know what I mean? Like, and so like there was that period, and like since then I feel like it has been, okay, now we're gonna have an 80s type band that's like super 80s sounding, like, and you know,
like heavy synth, like, I don't know,
yeah, or like even the bands like Interpol or bands like that came around that time.
Sure.
It's like they sound kind of like bands from the 80s that were really big. But anyways, I'm guilty of it in some way, like just trying to get into some style or something. It's a weird thing. But anyways,
you know, I
back
just
to the
please, James.
Question was about my kid.
James, man. I want to, because you know what it is when he gets old enough. Maybe just one thing that.
Well, the first thing that really kind of hit me was I was gonna say it, or I said already a little bit, was that I stopped being so concerned about getting old or something. You know, like I wasn't afraid to be heading into 40s. So
absolutely, dude.
Like a strange thing. I think if I didn't have a kid and I was still out in the world and doing whatever, like I would probably be. And you know, don't get me wrong. Like still, like the kind of thing I'd rather. Lots of people love just like where they're at. Like my friend is like loves where he's at and loves the idea of getting older and it's all cool. But I'm also like, oh man, if I was just 30 now and then I could go. What I know, all the stuff I know now, you know, a million people feel this way, and then a bunch of people feel totally content in their age and just look forward to getting older. And I think having a child at least that was one of the first early things. Was like, oh yeah, like I feel okay now. Like it seems right.
Yeah.
If I have a kid and I'm 40 something, no big deal. You know, like you just grow into that and you grow with that.
Do you feel like you've always? I mean, I feel like for me, I've always had an old soul. Like even when I was a young kid. So like to me, it's like I'm just getting older and growing into that soul. I was so young, and I don't know, that to me, and having kids just makes, I don't know, time has stood, although it's going a little bit faster now that they're getting older. It's weird. Once they hit like 10, 12, 15, and then it's like, oh my God.
Yeah, I have like some nephews that, they're basically around that age, like 13, you know.
But what about the soul thing? Do you feel like you always kind of had like a...
Yeah, I always kind of felt like that. I'll be interested to find out if my son, where he goes, like what's he gonna be? What's gonna be his trip or his like theme or something? You know.
He's gonna probably carve his own.
Yeah, there's
time.
like all sorts of things that you're. I've definitely. I guess. I'm learning. I've learned, anyways, having a kid that just like, man, like time is so precious. It's really precious, and you have to really plan things out. Like you need to make good use of your time, because when you have a kid, as you know, now you have almost no time to do all the things that you used to do with all the free time in the world. You know, so that's like a hard lesson and a hard thing to adjust to. It's like, how do I? But then it's interesting because it does make you maybe practice better, or like, you know, spend more time doing this thing, because it's really important, and you only have this finite
you
time.
use your time more efficiently to a degree.
So there's that, you know, and I think there's just a million things that you can go down the list, I guess.
No, it's fine. I mean, I just want him to one day see this and smile about it. You know, it's just like the before I let you go, Zeph. I mean, like it's funny. I'm turning 44 this weekend, and it's already been pretty cosmic, and it's going to get really crazy tonight at Skinny Dennis. But you know, I really feel like I was not that close with him, but I always still feel his spirit. It was Neely, and I just wanted to know how you if he comes into your life at certain points, or you know, I just feel like I am now some kind of, you know, some sort of conduit to continue his legacy just through the people that he touched. I mean, I think it was the Bunker Studio album that we talked about, where he, you know, where there were a couple of times where there were some tunes where he really helped you get it over the finish line. The guy was Dave Schools called him the King Mixer. He just mixed everybody. Without Neely, nobody would really know anybody. You know, it seems like that community, and I just wonder, you know, how he still visits you, if at all.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's an interesting. I think about him often. You know, it's just, it'll be random thoughts, or, you know, just it's something unrelated in the day makes you think of that. And I don't know if that just has to do also with someone going suddenly like that unexpectedly, that it like the energy lingers around in a different way. Or, you know, but I am more connected with so many different people that I don't know if I would have been connected with those people. So that's interesting. And I it's always kind of
always on my
mind.
Yeah,
it still feels kind of recent, you know. But it also is the thing of making a record with someone and then they disappear quick after that. It's like, damn.
You know the better question is,
do
you try to carry on his spirit through your music? I mean, you know, whether or not there's fleeting thoughts or why, you know, to me it's like, you know, I remember one of my last texts with him. It was the last Chris Robinson Brotherhood show in Long Island before they quit and or stopped, and I remember texting before the show. I'm like, "Yo, play like Coltrane." And he's like, "You don't even listen to Coltrane." And, you know, he's not that. I mean, I love Love Supreme and stuff, but I was like, but what I meant was play in his spirit. And so, like, that's the thing. Like, to me, like, do you still try to carry on his spirit? I mean, not that it's even a conscious thing, but to me, it's like that's how you can honor him. You know.
Yeah, I think somehow I'm sure I'm doing that because I feel like he had a big influence on me as a person in my life in the short time we worked together. So that's naturally happening. I've actually recently been thinking back because we did text and exchange a lot of different stories and things about life while we were working together, and then even after the record.
Sure.
And it was always this thing. He was always very encouraging of like playing guitar, where he was like, I was like, man, if I could just learn how to play a couple things that Jerry or someone does or whoever I'm into. He's like, you totally can, man. Like, you can do that. You just need to, you can do it. Like, and he used to actually say that about, I was maybe going to do a Dead cover as part of my Kickstarter thing, but I ended up getting the funding. He's like, the great thing about that is you're never going to sound like them. So just like, go ahead and rip off as much as you want, because it's never going to sound like that, because only they sound like that.
Exactly.
So cool advice. Like, things like that pop in my head, especially obviously doing this stuff with Shred and like all the people that are connected with the Neil thing on social media, that you're always seeing things people are posting, and just trying to get better at guitar and learn things. I